inspiration part. There's a format and the design, and now and the other part is the styling. So on this part with the inspiration, so just to start off, how I usually do it, if you have like a specification, you're told like you need to create a dashboard that shows this kind of data and that kind of data, or the certain kind of graphs. So in my approach, how I usually do it is I usually find some sample designs. And I think you've also seen this as we were as we were coming up with a design for ISOPs. I shared a few designs. Then from those the designs we come up with uh, what we might want the site to look like. But in this instance, is the dashboard. So some of the websites I usually use there's one called Dribble, another one called Behance, and also for Dash specifically, we have the Dash Gallery. So I have them open here, all of them. So this is Dribble. So if you go to dribble.com, and that's Dribble with a triple B, you'll get, then you search for what you want. So for example, if in the website for ISOPs, I searched for landing page, then you get different designs from different people about what a landing page might look like. So in this case, I'm searching for a dashboard. So from here now, I'm able to see like what dashboards look like and how I might structure one. So based on the design I want, so there are many of them, but I think you also get like a situation like Netflix, how you keep searching for movies and not finding one because there are too many of them, which are very good. But if you find one, then for example, this one, it's easy to now follow up with the layout or how you envision your dashboard to be. So similar thing for the Behance one. There are different so these two are mostly design oriented. So you'll find like many people designing different dashboards for different use cases. But for the Plotly one, they are actually working dashboards. So this is you'll see like how people have come up with a fully functional dash application with different plots and different graphs. So these three are for me, those are the ones that I usually use a lot to come up with a way to, an idea with what I want to create as a dashboard. So there's now the design, the inspiration part for the design. Then you can also look at the previous work. So if you've done a dashboard before, you can pick up that dashboard and change a few things. So for example, this is the ISOPS dashboard for the tweets, the annotations. So if I wanted to create, so I think for example here I took the inspiration from this was from you just open this site. So on Lyft we had this dashboard that they created. Then the design was just something I came up with. But then from there I can come up with this design, then use it similarly to create now this one, but just change a few things. So it's a lot of the code is reused, but with a few design changes. Then on another one is just now coming up with something on your own. So you can just take a paper and pen and draw like something you might think of as a design you want to follow. So any questions on that? Uh, Lynn, I was, this is something you had asked for before, so I think, is that clarified, or is there anything more you might like to? to know about the inspiration part?
No, for the inspiration part, we are good.
Okay. All right. And the second part of this was the format and the design. So I think if you go through uh, the Dash documentation, Dash is built uh, with Flask and Python. I mean Flask and React. So which is now the visual part of it. So and they follow structure. So you can have like a single page application where it's just one page, but it has like different navigation methods. So you can create different pages, but they're using the same route. So which is now the single page. But you can also have a multi-page application where you have different pages, and for each different page it has something. So for example, the one I shared on this the lift one, it has different pages and you can see all these pages. So this is a multi-page application. But then if I was to, well, this one is also a multi-page since we have multiple pages and there can be additions on that. But if I wanted to create this as a single page, it's very possible with Dash. So as you create your dashboard, then it's important to keep this in mind. So most of the time you'll find that you have multiple pages, but if you need to show like graphs for one specific page, then the single application is the best option for you. Then when creating the page, it's best to start now designing and thinking of the code that you need to reuse. So for example, if I wanted, where is this? I think I'll share this with the ISOPS one. So for example, I created this component with the user. So I can share a user component here. But then if I go to the blog, it's the same thing I'm using here, but now with a modified version. And it's also the same thing that's here. So, and you can switch off and switch on or hide and show different things, but you're still using the same code. So I think also here in this instance, this is what the same thing we did. So we have this card, the white card, which has a graph. So since we don't want to keep writing the same code for the card, we just create like a card component and just pass in the graph. Or we can have the styles for that card and copy them to the different, or just create the style as one, then reuse it in different places. So yeah, so that's the bit of identifying what kind of application you want and what kind of structure you want to have. Then again, on the format and design, choosing the right dashboard tools for you and your use case. So most of the time in our situation, we'll find we're using Dash and Flask, but there's also Streamlight. I'm sure most of us have come across that. So it's similar to Dash, but with its own syntax and way of creating dashboards, which also has a gallery which you can use to also get the ideas. Then there's I'm not sure. I mean, for most the guys who use R, there's a platform called Shiny, and the Shiny also has a version for Python. So I haven't used that one much, but there's also that option. Then there's also Flask. But then if you need to have like a very uh, reactive and also very interactive uh, dashboard, then that's where you have like a separate backend and a separate front end, which is mostly JavaScript front end, which enables you to have that reaction in the browser. So I'll share an example here on there was this state of CSS website that so here they share like different graphs and ways to interact with it. So if I wanted to see awareness, the usage, interest, retention, then there are different graphs here as well, and here as well. So most of these, as much as you can create this using Plotly, these are very customizable graphs. Most of them using like a library like D3.js. And now, like to have this in your website, then you need like a custom front end. So something that's not able to be built in specifically like Dash. So yeah, so in that instance, now we use things like React, Vue, Angular, and all that. So any questions from there? Debates?
Yeah, thank you, Newton, for your elaboration and also illustrations
Mhm.
over this. If you find that most websites you load with a lot of graphs or a lot of data, you find that sometimes it's very slow or it takes time to load, like even 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
Mhm.
And I think how can you optimize that, maybe like so that it can work faster? And for this case, using Arshiny, can find that it takes much time to load so many graphs.
So I think that's mostly an optimization problem. But for instance, I'm not sure, like, I'm not exactly sure how Shiny works, like in the backend. But some of them are not optimized to handle like a lot of data. So, for example, if you're using Flask and a React frontend, then you can manage how much data you're sending to the frontend on the Flask end of it. So you can do things like if you're showing like a graph, but that is controlled with a drop down. In the
Yeah.
drop down, you can share a little bit of the content, then keep updating as you continue. Also, you can do things like pagination to increase the performance. For Shiny, I am not sure, but that then will be an issue like with how you load in your data and how much data you're loading into your application. So if you find a way to cut down how much data you're sending into the front end, then that might improve the performance.
Again, it is possible to transform from maybe R scripts to maybe a JavaScript kind of. Is it possible maybe to link the two?
Uh, I don't think so. I mean, but it's not impossible.
Mm.
But I think the ideal situation will be you moving now from if you have the R script that also shows you dashboard, how you can recreate that using now just creating like a backend that uses R or Python and share the data with as through an API to the front end now, which shows you graphs.
Yeah, because that is one of the big things that we do,
Yeah.
especially the website they have. We have in SEMA, when you try to load like a dashboard or a dash app,
Mhm.
realize that it takes much time. I tried even to open now since you started, but if I can show you, can I share my screen briefly?
Yeah,
So
sure.
that yeah, this is what I mean. This is like the landing page which you are talking about it.
Mhm.
So like you have so many tabs. I think one of it was the status. So you see how it's taking time to load even something small.
Yeah, that might be just an optimization problem on their side. But I think also in some instances you'll find that where they deployed the application, for example, if we use something like Heroku,
Yeah, it could be much faster.
yeah, but also them, they sometimes you find like graphs on Heroku, they take time to start up. So it's in JavaScript we call it a cold boot. So it
Mhm.
takes time to restart the server, then which now shares the application. Because for them, in order to like cut down on resources, they need to shut down some of the applications that are not being used actively.
Okay.
Yeah, so sometimes you'll find it's a situation like that. But I think on instance is just the loading of the data and sharing of the data on the website.
Yeah, that's why you can see now loading, taking time to load
Yeah.
some visualizations, which I think it should be something which is very fast.
Mhm.
Yeah. Maybe I can stop because it's not showing us what we need.
Yeah. All right. Any more questions on that section? Oh, all right. So where was I? So now when it comes to styling, which is not mostly the major part. So since you already have your dashboards, you already have the graphs and how they look like. Now the styling part is how you structure your page. So for styling, there are different ways. Sorry. So there are different ways on how to style your application. So the main one that we use is CSS, but there's other styling ways like Bootstrap and Tailwind. And then you can use UI libraries. So for CSS, I think last time we went through something on CSS, but as I shared, you can come to the W3 schools to go through like all the styling guides for CSS, which are quite a lot. But here it explains to you each and every one. So how to add colors, how to add backgrounds, how to add borders. So I think the section that will be important here is like how to add margins and padding. So if I was to illustrate that, so if you had a box like this, yeah, then I say I need to add another box here. So the space between this box and this one is a padding. So that's the padding of this box, the bigger box. Then I was illustrating margins. So if I added a margin, for example, margin 10px, so it will move this the box which is inside uh, on all sides. It will move it inwards by 10px. So it will shrink down there. So the space between if you add a margin between this one and the outer one, then the space that's inside here is what the margin is. But if you add a padding inside the big one, now that turns into this space. Is that, I mean, do you get what I mean? I hope you're doing it. No. All right. So how Tibet?
I think I thought I was raising my hand.
Oh, okay. So for example, now if I add margin to this, the smaller box, I think I change it to, so if I add margin, so I mean if I add a padding to this box, the padding will happen inside the box only, not outside. So I think that's an easier way to explain. So if I added a margin to this specific box, so like say 10px, then the space will be inside the box. So it will shrink the content but leaves 10 pixels margin inside the box. But if I added a margin, so if I added a margin which is 10px as well, then the space or the space that will be created is outside the box. So it will leave 10, like a 10px margin outside of the box. Is that clear or not? So I think let me just show that on. So here if I was to create a div, then I do CSR div here, give it a height of say 30 run, also a width. Say a background. So here then I put, I just do another div inside. So just similar to how we had the illustration. Give this a class of inside. Then I have some text. So for example, if we had something like that, so now if inside the div, I mean, if we want to do a margin, say, so if I do a margin on this, on the blue div, then say like 20px, it should create, move like outside. On the outside part, it will create now this this section. You see it has moved inwards. So that space now is the margin. So you want it's the space between the blue and the orange one. But since it's not in this area, so it only has the 20px of it, not like the whole area. So it's only 20px. So I can increase this and it will go up to 40. Then if I wanted to add a padding, it will be inside the blue box now. So 40px again. So you see the content will move inside. I think Yeah, so this is two of them because they are two divs, and I've targeted all the divs. But I hope now, like that, you've gotten the uh, padding and margin.
Yeah, it's not clear.
Okay. Right. So you have some time. So yeah, as I was saying, so the CSS bit, you can look it up here. I'll share the links on the WhatsApp group. I think also the other bit now that, since we are here in the CSS, which we'll also look at, but I think, yeah, we'll just look at it afterwards. So there's a CSS, as I mentioned, to style, and then there's Tailwind. So Tailwind is they are like utility classes that help you. So it's similar to CSS, but now you just get like small classes you add to your text. I mean, to your elements. So for example, as you can see in this illustration, they are adding this text, which, I mean, the utility classes, which now in turn they are generated as CSS classes. So if I was to come to the dev tools here, and then over on this, you see it has the class, but it has like smaller class utility classes. But if you look into what it translates to, it's just the CSS. So this class, the class name is just the color. Then the text LG is just the font size and the line height. So they are small utility classes that they change once you're deploying or once you build in your application, they are generated into CSS. So why I will choose this is just because but I mean, to do the Tailwind one, you will need to have a good understanding of the CSS. So you can't you can't start with Tailwind alone. So once you have a good grasp on CSS, then it's easier to style using Tailwind, because then now you do away with the need to have multiple files for CSS and repeating class names. So I think so for this, like for the ASOP's dashboard, I use Tailwind CSS, and it's now easier since now we have like a similar configuration for the Tailwind CSS. I can reuse it here, and it's the same one that I use for the dashboard and also for the website. So as you can see, like a lot of the colors are the same. So I just took the website Tailwind configuration, then moved it to the dashboards. So and again, it's still the same one that I'm using on the oil prices one. So, yeah, so that's CSS and Tailwind. Bootstrap is similar to Tailwind, that it gives you like uh, classes to add to your elements. But I also haven't used it in a while, so I'm not sure like how much of it has changed. Um, hmm. So yeah, so it's yeah, so it gives you like the dot container class, which now translates into their specific styles. It gives you a way to add grids, gives you other utility classes again. So margin padding, you can do ME and MD. So it's very similar to Tailwind, but now the difference is that in Tailwind, you're able to control like what styles you want to have using the config. But Bootstrap, they have like in-house classes that are very specific. So yeah, then there's now the UI libraries. So for this one, I chose to use the dash runtime components. So the difference between the styling here and the runtime components is that they give you already styled components. So for example, here, if you just did like say for a button, sorry, if I came and installed the dash mountain, then I did a dmc.button, it gives you an already styled one. So I think this is uh, a good styling guide to use when you need to have like a lot of MVPs out there. So because you're the only thing you need to learn is how to use this component. So as a group, the group only aligns the buttons in this section. Then you have all your buttons as children. So you have a default button, a subtle button, and it has like different variants. So these are already styled for you. So if I was to install this and use the same button, it will come out the same way, how it looks here. So, and they have a lot of components. So there's a drawer, a menu, model, popover, an alert. You have a nav link, a pagination stepper, all that. And also when it comes to now adding like grids and yeah, as we saw like with the groups kind of thing. So we have like a flex container here, which now aligns these three in a flexible manner. So that's the main difference between them. And all these components can be used in Dash without needing to build them yourself or adding like a different different JavaScript code to add these components. So as you can see, like the date picker, you just add the label, description, the min date, and you have the width. Then this is just a code to update the date picker. So once you select the date, it gives you like the output here. So and that's how it looks like. So if you install this and decide to use it in your graph, I mean even in your dashboard, then this is exactly how it shall be. Yeah. Any questions on that? Mm. All right. So when it comes now to CSS, or when you're doing your own styling, there's this grid and flexbox. So this is how you want to structure your dashboards, for example, like aligning these 5 boxes. How this is now using like a grid, and this can also be like a flex box. So there are those two ways of doing of making your layout. So there is we start with a grid. So the grid is designed for a layout of in 2 dimensions. That means you can create columns and rows, and they can be in the same application or the same bit of code. So for example, now in here in mobile, most of the time we use a grid call of 1. So it's just 1 column. But then when you come to larger devices, you can have a grid which has a row with 3 out divs, for example. Then one with you can create the same thing. This now, let me change the color here. So in the blue box is what we've made a div container. Then the red ones are the grid items. So the container now can be arranged as a grid. Then you specify the number of columns that you need. So for example, here I've put as 3 columns. So if we had like 3 things on top here, they will each will have its own column. Then the space in between is called a gap. So, and you can also customize how much of that gap you need. Then if we had multiple items, I can now decide like I want this fourth item to stretch throughout the whole grid. So I'll give this a class name of like a call span, which now stretches the whole thing into 3. Then I decide the next one I want to show only 2 items, and I can give this a call span of 2, or depending on the grid size you set. Then you can also, as you remember, like we mentioned that it's a multi-dimensional one. So if I wanted this this item to stretch like row wise, I'll have it stretch as a 1 column, but also as 2 rows. So you can have it as wide as possible or as narrow as possible. So is that clear for on the grid one? I'll show you an example as we continue, but I hope the explanation is clear.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, then for the flexbox, the flexbox is designed as a layout for 1 dimension. So you can either have rows or columns, but not both. So here if I had like, say I had these 6 items that stretch the whole width. If I did a flexbox on the items themselves, then I'll give it like a maximum or a maximum width. So if that width is if the item gets to that width, then the next one comes in as well into that with a similar width. So for example, if this was say like a width of 40 px, and I did the flex box, then so the blue box is in flex as a flex container. Then I set this item as 40 px. The same one will be 40 px and similar to 40 px here. But you can always change the width here. So you can, if you are able to control each item, then you can give it its own width. That doesn't, you can customize it. But if you cannot, then you usually set like a minimum width for each. If you're doing it like in a loop where you now have just one component that you need to, you're looping things, but the component is one, then you set as a minimum width. Now the thing with Flexbox, it will once it sees that it's near the end of the parent, it will now go to the next line. So it does not create like a width, a different grid. It just moves on to the next line as a row. Then on mobile, now you have them as a column. So you have each one as a column, but also depending on the width you set. If I did that, then this one is possible. If I gave it a different uh, width, then it's possible for this one to fill up this space. So for the Flexbox, they usually work with the spaces that you have set for them. But now the difference with the grid is the grid will work with the space of the size of the size that you've set the grid to be. So for example, in this case, I had 3 of them. So that will be a column of 3. So if I decided to change this to 4, then this one will come here as a smaller box. I hope that's clear on the flex and grids. But I'll show you an example. So on the annotations one, we did sure Lynn and John have gone through the code, so I'm sure you remember we had like a grid container. So we did like a create grid and then gave it a specific number. So either 1, 2, 3, or 4. So now those are the number of columns or the number of grids I want to give this section. So that's how it worked. But let's go to this one. So I'm just going to delete that. Give this a class of grid. And I'll create a number of divs. So I think this one I'll just give it a height of, we increase the height of this to 60 VH and a width of 100%. It's a grid container. Yeah, so I'll just let it fit the box. So now that we have this blue container, I'll give it like add like different divs. So I'll create item. And I'll have like multiple of them. Okay. Then here, if I do dot grid item, I just give them a say width 100 px and just do a background color. Say yellow or in a height. Give it like 70 px. So all of them are now like under each other. So the whole 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 the whole 6 items, they are on top of each other. So now if I added, let's start with the flex box. So if I did this to display as flex, now they will be on top of each other, but now they are aligned as a flex. So then if I added a gap, so the flex displays them as a row, but you can always change that. So by default is a row. Then so if I did like forum of 10 px, now that creates the gap as I mentioned before, and this gap can always be changed. So now if I did a min width, so this is 100 px, but if I needed to increase this, I can do like 300 px, and they change. But as you can see here, now if I wanted it to overflow, to move, this will just keep going. since we haven't set it to, sorry, to do, to go to the next row. So to do that, we need to update the flex to no wrap. So if we do flex wrap, then it comes to the next row. But if you do no wrap, then it just continues. So there are like different classes, different types of classes that you need to understand once you're doing like with the CSS grid and flexbox. So, I'll share the flexbox as well, but it's very similar to the grid. So I hope that is clear on the flexbox. Where is it? Yeah. Questions on this? All right. So now if we have the same items, so if I need to decrease this. I mean, this only works with the flexbox. So if I was to change this into a grid, now the default grid will just give you like different rows. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. And this so for the flexbox, if you need them to be in a column, all you need to do is change the flex direction. So by default is usually a row, but then you can make it a column. And now it creates the column. But now depending on the width, the mean width that you have set, they will change. So these are the three columns. So as you can see, like it will come here, here, then here, here, then all of them here as columns. But by default is usually row, but you don't actually need to set this as a style. So now when we come to, I'll just leave the gap. If you need to set it up as a grid, which is now I think this is the main style that for dashboards people use. So if you have like a grid, if you display as a grid, so it has it has them as all this rows. We decrease that to 10. Then since we have set the height to 60 VH, that's why it's overflowing. But if we did this to auto, then it will, depending on the size of the content inside, it will keep increasing automatically. So so as you can see that the mean width doesn't actually matter when you're using the grid, so it takes up the whole space. But you can set it up so if you need to have a width, then you need to have the specific width set. Since it's just a mean width, then it will just take up the whole thing. Then if I need now to start having the specific grids, I'll do here on the blue container, which is the parent container. We do have grid calls, grid template columns. So this, I'm arranging this as a column. So I need to refer this. So as you can see here, less specifically here, this is how you arrange them. So the grid column property. Sorry, that's the item. Yeah, the template columns. So by default, it will come as auto. So each and every one of them will have like a automatic, auto width and height. But if you need to arrange them depending on what content you have, you can specifically have the sizes here. So it will be 80 px, 200 px, then the outer width, and the 40 px. But most of the time, just not sure if they've added it there, but I think here we'll just have them as so the one FR is a fraction. So I think I'll just see how the other one was. Sorry, I need to refer this back. So grids. So if you're using the repeat class, then it does that for all the grid items that you have. Oh, yeah. So so the first parameter that the repeat option gets is the number of grids that you need. So here, if I was to say 4, then it will create 4 grids. If I came here and changed to 6, then it will have 6 grids. Then for 1 is just the 1 grid, but so for example, we go with the 4. Then so now that creates our grid, now the starting point of our grid. Now the other bit is if I wanted to change the size of one grid item. So there's a property called the column space. So the call span, which now you can set to the number of spaces you want it to take on this grid. So if I want the first item to take, so if I said I need to add the classes here. For item 1. Yeah, so I'll just use those ones. So if I wanted item 1, so if I add item 1, then I give it a call span of 2. It should take up 2 spaces. Might have the syntax wrong, so bear with me for a moment. Yeah, so since I'm using CSS, it's a bit different, but I use Tailwind a lot, so just give me a moment here. I mean, in the meantime, you can ask any questions you have.
Newton, this is just for CSS, right?
Yeah,
So if you wanted to use the Tailwind or to use the money time objects, it would be different, like how you create the grid, right?
oh yeah. So for example, if I came to the Tailwind one,
Mm-hmm.
which is the one I'm used to in use, so I may come to the grid.
Mm-hmm.
You see now, once you if you do like a if you add this class name, I mean the utility class, then it maps to this, which is
Yeah.
something similar as we did. But then if you need to add the columns,
Mm-hmm.
now that's why you specifically add like a grid call 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how many grids you need, which will now
Okay.
be mapped back to the specific CSS class.
Okay.
Yeah, so here, this is what I wanted to do. So if I did like a call span 2, then this is the CSS class it maps to. So let's to copy that.
Mm-hmm.
Then it takes up 2 spaces here. Similarly to the rows. But yeah, so ideally this is what it maps back to. So if you give it a call span, it will span the specific number of columns you've set it to. So for the dash mountain ones, you have a grid component. If I'm not wrong. Yeah, here. So so this is a grid component. So then you can add the span. I think this is actually easier because now you have like this only span, which now maps back to the class where you need how many spaces it needs to span. So this is what then you will specify as a grid in when using the mountain components. Yeah, so I think for now, I think we can end it there because those are the 2 main things I wanted to go through. And we can, I can share like the resources and also the code base that we might, next time we can have like a small demo on it. So yeah, any more questions on this? Sorry for going above time.
Hi. So I think I got everything.
Mhm.
I think the only thing that I think one thing that was disturbing me about the design part was I think me and John, we normally use Flex because every time we try to configure maybe a width or something like that, it usually like it's built because in my mind I'm thinking like a page should be 100%, so I'll mostly do 30 30 30, then it goes to the next row. So I think now I'll need to learn on the grid.
Yeah.
I think that will solve most of my problems.
Yeah, the grid is usually the easier one, but for Flex, you need like to also understand the spacing, like the width, the mean width, all that. But yeah.
So let's say you have like in your mind you have like you need maybe let's say you have 3 line graphs
Mhm.
and you need them on the same, but you also need them to be the same width or something. So out of let's say 100%,
Mhm.
how do you space your graphs? That is. let's say it's line graphs, and you need them to be on the same row. The
I mean,
width.
so most of the time you'll just divide that 100 by 3. So you can set the specific. So if you use like a grid, for example, and set it to show all of them in a column, I mean in a row, then it will be specific. So it will all of them will have the same width.
So
But
for
then
the grid,
yeah,
I think it will be easier. But
yeah.
let's say for the flex.
So for flex now you'll need to work out the size of the width. So you can decide to go by half. Then also check to see like how the how it translates to when you're visualizing it. So because sometimes you'll find that one graph is smaller than the other one. But
Yeah.
then I think you mostly need to work out the sizing yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that was what was really disturbing on our part. We were constantly trying to work out the flex. So it was kind of like going to the next row, and we didn't want it there. So we kind of like most of our projects were halfway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I had a similar situation with the sorry John, just for a moment, with the ISOPS dashboard. So some time back we had this taking up the whole page, but they were big, and one of them was if I changed the grid, then I mean the flex size, then one of them will come down here. But we wanted them all of them in the same line. So now I changed this to use the grid and gave it a grid of 5, which now you see, as you can see, like all of them are equally spaced and the same size. So yeah, John.
A more variation than a question.
Mhm.
Is it possible for you to create dash dash versions of that? Could you go back to Excalibur?
Mm, yeah.
Okay, so there you see that grid there with cospan 1, cospan 3, and so on.
Yeah.
You create that in like you create that in Dash
Mhm.
without the graphs. Just for each of those divs, you just color them differently so that it's able to see.
Yeah.
You do it now using CSS or the Plex like we were using before, and then you can also use the Tailwind.
Mhm.
And finally, you can use the Dash money time, and then you can take like the entire week, but share the code base so that we compare this with what we've understood.
Yeah.
I think that would be very helpful so that we're able to compare, and then you wouldn't have to do another session because it will be clear, and you can always share that code on GitHub before for any person who wants to learn more about doing these grids.
Okay, that's noted. I'll do that.
Probably before we go to Lean, within that link, that code base, add the links to all the things that you've discussed today. So you've discussed about your inspiration and where you get it. Then you've also shared the W3 school. So just add those links there so that within one code base, we can be able to have all the resources we need. I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I'll do that. Also share the visualizations. I'll add them in the README file.
Yeah, exactly. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, on my part, I wanted because you said we'll have another session so that you can show us how it looks and everything. So I was wondering if we can use because most of us are actually we know Python. So can we use code that we already have the graphs and everything? Then you can just show us how it fits, because I think the reason why I didn't share my dashboard on the project that we had on ASOPs, the weekly challenge, it's because I kind of had a layout in my mind, but I couldn't put it now on an app. Every time we tried to fix it with John, it kind of like it spilled, and I was so frustrated. So I didn't like share my my Dash app. So I still have the code. So can we like use it for next time? I'll share it with you, and the layout that I had in my mind. If
Yeah.
it's good, then we can use it as an illustration.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think everything is decided and looks good. And thank you for your hard work, Newton.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, I'll do that and share all the resources that I have.
Let's
Also,
go.
just to mention, if you ever need like to show your HTML, CSS stuff, just come to this CodePen website. You just need like a quick demo, so it's very, very nice.
Add that as part of the resources we need within that code base. I think that would be nice.
Yeah. All right, I'll do that. So I think we can go on to AOBs. Oh, anyways, but before I do the AOBs, I wanted to mention that the emails are ready, but I need to also, I mean, I can just do that quickly. So I don't know if I have them here.
Newton, maybe we can do it next time because one of the key members who require those emails is Stacy and Norbert, and they're not with us.
Oh, sorry. I thought I had seen Stacy somewhere.
Yeah, she was, but I think she disappeared. So
Okay.
probably what we can do is that in the meantime, we can create a PDF version of how we can access the email, but with the intention that next time you present that very PDF.
Okay. No worries. I'll do that. So I just wanted to mention that the emails are there. So I'll also share like how they are working, and also the login details. So yeah, think if we don't have any more questions about this, and we can go on to AOBs.
And the business card. Newton. And the business card.
Oh yeah. Those ones are also ready. So it's just adding them the names and emails.
Okay.
Oh, and just a
Okay.
question on that. Do we need to show the address for like a company building or something? And if we need, which
Not at,
do we show?
not at the moment because we don't have one. When I was in Nairobi Garage, that was already available.
Mhm.
But now because I'm not there and we don't want to direct maybe future clients there, let's think about it. For now, you don't need to include it.
Okay, so we just do online stuff at the moment. No
Yes.
physical.
Yes, we don't have a physical office at the moment.
Okay. All right, so we can go on to AOBs if there are any. I'll take
Hello.
this silent. Yeah, William.
Okay. Thank you, Newton, for the class. Like Lynn and John have been contributing, our problem has been the design part. Today, we also had some design of what we need as a dashboard, and in the coming days, we are going to have, following the class,